Hume wants to point out there are certain requirements of being a good judge. You must have plenty of experience. You must be free of prejudice. You must be able to give time and attention.
I've tried following advice over the last 40 years, and I promise you, it's been worth it.
To meet those requirements is to put you in the market to be a good judge.
I don't know why, I always feel there's something alarming about an empty amphitheatre.
Today we're rather suspicious of the idea of a connoisseur. It's become tainted with notions of snobbery and posturing. But Liz Pretty-John, an art historian at York University, thinks that the underlying idea that you only appreciate beauty through close and practiced attention is worth keeping.
I can remember an example that I often cite to students. When I was myself an undergraduate, we had a particular looking exercise which was to compare and contrast two Japanese medieval sculptures of angry gods. And we looked at them for ages and ages and ages, and they just plain looked identical. And it was actually that repeated looking over a period of days and days and days, and talking about it among each other and saying, well, what about that? What about the other thing? We started to see minute differences. I mean, differences, for example, in the way the figure was standing on one leg, or the slenderness of the figure, or the
turn right in 200 yards.
Started to be able to differentiate them after a very long time. Now, what we were told to begin with was that actually these
turn right now.
were very different in date. One was made in the 11th century, and the other was made in the 14th century. So if we had actually sort of gone with our first impression of the thing and said, oh, those are two identical sculptures, we would really not have engaged.
Keep straight on this road for the next quarter of a mile.
Objects.
Quite often, people will think when they go into galleries that they can assess the merit of a work of art almost immediately. So do you think
Turn left onto the lead.
assess and respond to
Turn left onto the lead 4030 at the end of the road.
That is the way most people experience
Turn left now.
the museum. They spend some shockingly tiny amount, like half a second. And in fact, I have sometimes found that when I stand
Keep straight on this road for the next 4 miles.
in a museum, that the guards start to think that perhaps I'm slightly strange, and perhaps they ought to tell me to move on.
what you're suggesting is that there's an apprenticeship. You need to have quite a lot of time and experience and develop those skills. And rather than thinking the connoisseur is someone very different from us, the idea is, well, if we want to develop those skills, we have to put in that amount of time and attention.
And you can do it by traveling and seeing hundreds and thousands of things, and there are things to look at everywhere you go, or you can do it with a very limited range of objects, one or two things. I'm thinking of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who never traveled, stayed at home, knew very few works of the past, but got the most out of them because of a very dedicated and diligent period of study over many years.
So, does Hume solve the problem of whether judgments of beauty are subjective or objective? Well, kind of. He tells us that some judgments are more accurate, and that anyone can be a good critic, but they have to put the work in.
The History of Ideas was presented by Barry Smith and produced in Bristol by Jolyon Jenkins. The programme's produced in association with the Open University. If you take a look at the website, you can see a series of short animations explaining some of the key ideas about freedom examined in the series. They're rather beautiful, according to my sense of beauty anyway. David Hume would have thought. This is BBC Radio 4. It's time now for Call You and Yours with Winifred Robinson.
Hello. Today, we're asking if a grammar school place was your ticket to a better life. Call us now, please, to answer that question.